Oh, is this the public one? Okay, cool.
Hey, welcome everybody. This is a cloud provider vSphere bi-weekly call. Today is October 10th, 2018, and as far as I know, we have a light agenda today, but every time we have a light agenda, we end up taking the entire 30 minutes, so there's no point in saying that every time. All right. Let's kick things off. Let's look at what we have today. Just put your name on the agenda so we can see who was attending today. Let me see if I can handle this in a better way. Okay. Okay. So first thing on the agenda, I put the to give an update on the current status of the cloud provider effort. So these are more like a I would say I wouldn't call that retrospective, but it's kind of like looking back at what we've done so far since we started working on this, and we got to a point where we have a decently featured CCM working for vSphere. We do have almost feature parity with what we have in tree currently. Notable missing feature right now is the zone support, but it's part of something we're going to work on definitely for the next release cycle. I mean, we're keeping release cycles pretty close to what Kubernetes is doing, even though we're not necessarily tied to it. I mean, but given that the cloud provider interface itself is still in flux and it's still being moved around, there's actually another item on the agenda to look into what has been done in the past 2 days on that. Given that there's a lot of churn in KK currently for extracting the cloud provider code, keeping track of the releases and having the same schedule for even for work that is out of tree, it just makes sense. So I think right now we're more tracking KubeCon instead of 113 because they're mostly at the same time. As far as I understand, 113 is going to be released right before KubeCon US. So we are tracking for KubeCon US for kind of a new adding new features to the current CCM. So we're in pretty good shape. We have CI signal. Thanks, Andrew. Which is great. We're running conformance tests every day. We have a signal that is mostly green, which is awesome. So it's looking pretty solid so far.
It's all green now. We disabled, just FYI, we did disable the tests that were running on the cron job on the jump host because there was a what word am I looking for? It has to do with concurrency. There was a race condition where Flannel was not bringing up routes quick enough if the first tests were network related. That does not happen with Yakety because I cheated and used a static route. So we've disabled those, and so we should be all green. Just FYI, I gave the SIG testing the option, leave it up to them to protect us from the lease blocker category, but I think they're going to leave us. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I mean, which is fine. I think that was not an unintended consequence of adding.
Yeah, it was. We copied the OpenStack PR, and there was a single line that we thought was just adding it to the dashboard, but was actually adding it to the release blocker category. And so they were actually kind of happy that we kind of revealed that was a problem, and they're, they didn't even want to discuss it in Slack in the meeting yesterday. We talked about it in Slack. They're like, "There's nothing more to add. It's okay. It was an accident. Accidents happen."
Yeah, I mean, and I guess it's also nice to have to be somehow in the path of release blocker, especially now since we're just getting started on 113, which means that we're it's easy to correct if there's a problem, there's a flake, or there's a miscommunication, like in this case. But it's great to have at least I have the signal being be actual part of the Kubernetes release process.
Yeah, no, it is. It's kind of nice. I didn't realize it was going to be. I think we would have elected to wait a few weeks to show that we were consistently green. But hey,
yeah, great. It's the best time to do it, right? We're very early in the 113.
Yeah.
it's great. I mean, Band-Aids work. So next up is actually something that came up in a conversation today with Andrew, and even before. I mean, we are running CI on VMC, which is VMware on AWS, which is basically vSphere on AWS. And given that we don't have any load balancer facility by default on vSphere, like a plain vanilla vSphere, but given on VMC, we are basically running on top of AWS, we do have access to AWS resources like ELB. So we're thinking about exploring the possibility of extending the cloud provider to support ELB load balancers if vSphere, if the Kubernetes cluster is being run in vSphere on AWS, which will, make it easier for anybody running clusters on vSphere or AWS to, consume load balancer, because right now we have no support at all. And I mean, there's also possibility to figure out a way to provide the same facility to vSphere, like even on-prem, like providing, I don't know, something like an on-demand Nginx that is deployed, at every time that a cloud provider requires a load balancer.
I think we'd actually use the Linux virtual server project that I think I even mentioned last week, just with serendipity. Kubernetes actually uses it, and it's a new feature in kubeproxy, and I played around with it. But it's the same basic principle, but it's load balancing in the kernel.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much can be anything, really. It doesn't have to be Nginx. It can be pretty much anything that can do load balancer. The idea is just to have something that is like a separate entity that the platform can provide you, and that we can package in a way that is easily consumable by anyone.
Sure.
So there's no precondition like where you have to have, like, I don't know, NSX installed or something else. It would be nice to have the possibility to like consume whatever platform we have, and the customer or the end user might want to use. Like if they have NSX installed and they provide load balancers, which are great, just use that. If they don't have anything, just consume LVS or Nginx or whatever.
Where were you last week when I was raising this topic about wanting to provide Hui with load balancing? Literally the same topic. So this is so serendipitous. I've been researching this for a week and didn't even know it was part of the conversation in the CCM.
Yeah, this has been it's been something that has been around for a very, very long time, because this has been the case since we started working on, even before starting the auto tree work, even when it was still in tree and everything was focused on that effort. People will ask us, how do we provide load balancer in ESX? And I mean, there is actually I think there's actually an Nginx ingress plugin or something somewhere that kind of works.
Yeah, there is. I just know from the last week, people are cold on Nginx and HA proxy because of the way when you need to add dynamic load balancers to it, and at some point restarting it while still maintaining existing connections, it doesn't scale. That's why people have been pushed to LVS. But you're right, it's definitely something people are doing. It just doesn't scale. Maybe we don't care about that. But for this conversation, are we focused in general, or are we focusing on VMC?
I would say that we should focus on VMC because it's the low-hanging fruit right now. The facility is already there. We just have to consume it. Just figuring out what would be the best way to support it. I actually created an issue right before this meeting. I'm going to put that in the meeting notes. It's issue number 83.
I'd ask you to create that and assign that to me, just for people on the call. The CI/CD effort uses AWS load balancers, and I've been messing around with those via Terraform, via the CLI, via Go now for a couple of months. So again, I keep using the word serendipity, but I think this really is sort of a low-hanging fruit opportunity. There are a couple of design gotchas, like providing credentials. Fabio and I talked about that prior to this call. I think the TLDR of that conversation is while there are edge cases where you might want to support multiple VMC instances as the control plane, at least the first pass, there will be a single AWS credential package for a single VMC, linked account. Like we discussed, there is an edge case where you could run the CCM as a standalone process and manage multiple SDDCs. We're not going to support that at the moment. And then there's the reconciliation, making sure resources get cleaned up. We would, as we provide this, also provide a script in the repo that would make it easy for people to clean up orphaned resources if that were ever the case.
Yeah. So I just put down the issue on the mini notes, issue number 83. So it's assigned to you, Andrew. If anybody else wants to chime in and help on this, obviously that is always very helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wonder. Like I said, there's low-hanging fruit here, but here's the thing. I'm going to have no problem if we do this for VMC, and as we think about it, and we're like, okay, here's a way to do a general effort that encompasses all possibilities. Let's throw this out with the bathwater. I'm not going to care. I just think this is something we could probably provide in a couple of days once I could start working on it, and then maybe we actually spend real time coming up with a solution that is generic, and at that point, make it work for everything. Fabio, you mentioned you think that the NSX team may actually have a cloud provider itself that can provide load balancers. So if they do, we should go steal that for the CCM.
Yeah, I remember seeing something like that.
I know they have a CNI plugin, but that, and this was the first I heard this conversation earlier, that Kubernetes actually requests the LB from the CCM. I didn't realize that.
I need to look into that because I don't even know if that thing is being released by the NSX team or not. I do remember clearly that there was a point of integration that was built for NSXT, and it was not basically the CNI plugin. It was something else. But now I don't remember the name of the repo. I've seen that probably even a year ago. So I need to look into that and maybe make a connection with the team. Okay. Next up. So I mentioned that we have there's a lot of churn in KK around the cloud provider package. So I put the link here in the notes, the issue number 147, which is really pointing to the creation of the repo Kubernetes cloud provider. This is all related, and I just linked this because it kind of gives you the pointer back to the PR to move cloud provider to staging, which is number 68310, man. The number of issues and PRs in KK are reaching numbers that I haven't seen before. It's 68,000 PRs and issues. There's a lot. So basically, the idea is that there's this main pull request that has been merged, which is to move the cloud provider interface to staging. So, which means that we're going to have the cloud provider interface in a separate repo. Basically, this is the gist of it. What we're trying to track on, we should probably track this much closely because this impacts the way we're importing code into the CCM. So right now, there's no, there's probably change that have to be made like manually because they haven't tagged any versions yet in the new repo. I guess they're gonna cut a new version when 113 drops. In Go package in depth, we tend to tag versions of the packages coming from Kubernetes. So right now, if we try to pull down, there's no tag, so we have to pull from master. So I tried to do that, and there's probably a bunch of changes that have to be made because there's a lot of movement around, and I was looking at the Slack channel, and there's a bunch of other PRs coming from from people involved in SIG Cloud Provider to move dependency from other packages. For example, there's package API V1 service that depends on Cloud Provider. Then we're working on removing that. There's a lot of churn in moving all these. Basically, it's decoupling all the Cloud Provider interface was kind of entangled in all this other calls, and we're trying to just remove them and extract the Cloud Provider interface to have its own repo. So I guess I haven't actually looked into all the tentacles that this thing has, because it's being worked on right now. But it's something we have to keep an eye on, because it's gonna be it's gonna break the build, basically, if we want to move and start building against the tip of the branch, the tip of the repo in KK.
What do we link against KK? I mean, I thought that was spread out so that we weren't. Yeah, I pardon my ignorance. I don't actually build against KK, but I thought they tried to spread out those dependencies so that people aren't directly linking against KK. I didn't even think you could. I thought they basically said never do this.
Yeah, the problem is that Cloud Provider, the interface was still in KK, so you have to have that. So this is actually.
Hold on, is it an actual interface?
Yeah.
A Go interface.
Yeah.
So copy it.
It's not that easy, I guess.
Okay, I mean, depending on how they use it, if it's just an interface, then we could just copy it for the most part. There are rules for that, and there are places where that doesn't work. But I mean, depending on how, I mean, I'll take a look at it, but it may fall under where it's possible to just simply copy it. I mean, unless they're expecting an object from that, and because we're external process, I don't think they are. If it's all just interface definitions, we can just copy those. Doug, I mean, am I crazy here?
No, but
it wouldn't keep us up to date, and just depending on how much the dependency chain's a nightmare, it might be worth for development at least.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what we're trying to figure out, is that currently the Cloud Provider interface is a dependency nightmare. And they've been trying to straighten that nightmare. I mean, this Walter from Google has been working on this PR for a long time, and it got merged. I think it got merged yesterday or the day before. The very first migration. Yeah, it got merged 5 days ago. And there's they're trying to basically untangle this thing, and ideally what we want to have is we just want to have one dependency, and that one dependency should be against kh.io/cloud provider, which is the interface we want to use and we have to consume. So we should remove the dependency on KK altogether, which is, again, this is what we should be tracking. This is what we should be accomplishing. It is actually, the same effort that SIG Cloud Provider is working towards, which is, extract that interface. So I don't know if there's no specific action right now at this time. It's just something to keep an eye on, and something we should be, definitely work on before we release, especially if you want to release against the 113 and all the changes that 113 had. There's no expected changes to the interface itself, but if we want to, I would say, be up to date with what's going on in SIG Cloud Provider, we should be tracking this. Any comments on this, or we can move on, given it's as usual. We're getting pretty close to the end of the call. So last thing on the agenda is consider if we want to move this meeting to a monthly cadence, or even just roll it up into the main SIG VMware call. And this is because, I mean, we've been initially we started by having this meeting weekly because we were getting started and we had to bring it up to speed. we move it to bi-weekly, which I think it's kind of okay, because we usually have 30 minutes to to talk about usually. So there's usually no cancellation on this call. But given that basically we got there's just not so many efforts and not so many things we have to work on specifically in cloud provider. I was thinking if it would make sense to roll it up as like a 10-15 minute segment every other week in SIG VMware call, or just keep this meeting but make it monthly, like I don't know, every first week or every second week of the month doing this meeting, and then repeating that after every 4 weeks basically.
I vote for merging it into SIG VMware, because we're repeating the same, pretty much mostly the same information in that meeting.
Yeah, usually SIG VMware usually has like a roll up of all the efforts, and usually we spend at least 5 to 10 minutes on each effort, including this one. Here we usually spend 30 minutes, which is 3 times more. But I kind of agree with you. If we keep this, it's basically going to be kept a bi-weekly meeting, just shorter. So it's any other suggestions?
Yeah, I'd be in favor of rolling it up or making it monthly. And if we make it monthly, and we feel like we don't have anything, if we don't have much beyond what we roll up into SIG VMware, we could always cancel it or make use of the time for digging into something else.
Yeah, I think it's actually a more sensible approach to have it monthly. I mean, there's just a change in schedule. We don't change the format for SIG VMware. And what I'm afraid is that if we want to roll it up into SIG VMware, there might be a time where we just go off the rails on some conversation specifically around cloud provider, and we end up taking space from spending time from other people that may want to chat about other things that have to do with SIG VMware.
Let's do that. Let's make it monthly then.
Yeah, let's make it monthly. Starting from I'm gonna look into the calendar. So today is this is the first time we do this month, which would make the next one basically in November. So yeah, it will make sense. It makes sense. Yeah, I'm gonna just change the schedule and make it make the next one happen on November 7th.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, going once, going twice. All right, guys. Have a good rest of the day.
Aye.
See you guys.
Bye, folks.